Let's get more on this. We're joined by Samer Shehata, an Associate Professor of Middle East Studies at the University of Oklahoma, and he's joining us live from Norman. Mr. Shehata, always good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. So yet again, we're seeing voices in the US repeating their calls for an end to the blockade of Qatar, this time because of their interests in combating Iran. Will this have an impact?
Unfortunately, I don't think it will have an impact. You're completely right that the reason Mr. Engel mentioned this is that it comes in the context of the tremendous efforts by the Trump administration to exert greater pressure on Iran. And with regard to this issue and a number of other issues, including the situation in Yemen, Mr. Engel has been a voice of reason. But unfortunately, because the Trump administration has been completely taken by the Saudis, I don't foresee that this will lead to an end of the blockade, even though, as Mr. Engel said, it is in the U.S. interests to have the blockade over.
Do you foresee an end to the blockade while this Trump administration is in power?
Unfortunately, I don't. And of course, we don't know what's going to happen. If there were to be some kind of a conflict with Iran, not even a full-scale war, something like that could lead to the end of the blockade. But unfortunately, I will make 2 points. The first is, as you imply, I don't foresee an end to the blockade while this administration is in power, meaning that if a Democratic administration were to come into power after the next election, I would think that there would be increased pressure on Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the UAE, and Egypt to end the blockade. And then finally, the last point is that if the Obama administration had been in power, or almost any other administration had been in power, this blockade would not have taken place to begin with. In other words, it was only under this administration and President Trump's infatuation with the Saudi regime that the blockade could have taken place.
So it took place because of the administration that's in power, but what about the damage that it's caused to the region? Can that be repaired after the Trump administration?
Unfortunately not. I think that all the parties involved, and particularly Qatar, has seen some things that it would rather not see, and sentiments expressed by other governments and by other populations. So I don't believe that the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, will operate effectively after this. It's not operating effectively now. And I think in the future, not only Qatar, but other countries in the GCC, not part of the blockade, and smaller countries like Kuwait and Oman, will also take a lesson from the blockade. And that is some degree of distrust towards the larger neighbors, more powerful, more militarily ambitious neighbors, particularly Saudi Arabia and the UAE. So I think it's had irreparable damage with regard to the Arab Gulf states.
And you say that's in part because of the Trump administration's, what you call its infatuation with Saudi Arabia. I want to ask about Elliot Engel's comments about the United Arab Emirates and its role in conflicts in the region. What do you think was behind this? Because we haven't heard much criticism of the Emirates from the US government.
Well, we haven't heard much criticism from the U.S. administration, and you're right, we haven't heard much from the government generally. But if you look at what people have been writing in Washington, D.C., what the policy experts and the think tanks have been saying, people, at least those of us who work on this, are very aware of the United Arab Emirates' role in Yemen, for example. And of course, even the major newspapers have written about this in terms of torture, in terms of detention camps, in terms of violations of human rights, the Emirates' role in Libya and supporting Khalifa Haftar's attempt to become a new strongman there, and also the UAE's efforts to try to, through military force or financial assistance or other pressure, to really stop the Arab uprisings and the movement for democracy in the region, whether that's Libya or other countries. So people, I think, here and elsewhere are very much aware of the UAE's goals and efforts, but you're right, the administration hasn't spoken about it because it's not really opposed to those efforts.
Mr. Shehata, it is great to get your insights as always. Samer Shehata live in Norman, Oklahoma.
Thank you.